Welcome to The Breakdown, brought to you by PaintballAccess.com. I'm Matty Marshall alongside Todd Martinez. And man, we are just 2 short weeks away from the biggest event of the paintball year, the PSP World Cup, 18th through the 20th of October. Todd, as always, man, it's the World Cup. You always get excited for the World Cup, and everyone always says that every year. Oh my God, it's the World Cup. Well, why do people say that? Well, first of all, there's going to be about 400 teams there across so many different divisions of competition and styles of paintball that it is really the definitive paintball tournament. And we have now played through 4 events in the PSP season here in the Champs and Challengers professional leagues, the best players in the entire world represented here, the entire globe of paintball. And there are just so many storylines that are basically yet to be fulfilled. And I can't wait to see how, well, first of all, who's going to win, who's going to be the #1 player in the Top Gun division, and then who's going to step up, who's going to fall off, and then the World Cup sets the stage for next season.
I mean, there's so many different things that could happen. All the statistical categories that we have this year that we have to look at, who's going to be the tops of those. But, I mean, it all comes down to who takes the trophy home.
Absolutely.
Every single year since I've been playing professional paintball, been involved in professional paintball, it's all about who gets the trophy. It's all about counting how many World Cups you have at the end of your career, and this is going to be one of the biggest ones ever.
Well, exactly, and because there's so much at stake, as always, there's a lot at stake for the World Cup, but now the spotlight really has started to shine on these top players and these top teams, and these people are working so hard for this, and man, I don't know who's going to win. I mean, the way I look at it, between the top 4 teams, we're talking about Dynasty, Damage, Impact, and Heat. Those top 4 teams, obviously the favorite, and we're going to get a little bit more in depth into each one of those teams. But, then also the Ironman Infamous, X Factor, Legion. We got 187 coming back in from the Challengers division. Chicago Aftershock has finally stepped up and played well enough to make it into the Champions League as well. So that's also going to be interesting too. It's Chicago Aftershock finally playing in the Champions League for World Cup, and they have really worked hard in order to get there. So, it's going to be an interesting tournament to say the least, for sure.
Yeah, with all the pickups that Aftershock made, they've strengthened their roster. It's going to give them a good shot to show up at World Cup and be competitive. But we talk about those top 4 teams: Impact, Dynasty, Heat, and Damage.
Mm-hmm.
Dynasty and Damage, they've been in the final. Damage been in the finals 3 times this year. Dynasty's been in the finals twice this year. Heat, the tournament they made Sunday, they win the tournament. Impact has been on the cusp. Everybody has picked. I know Lasoya has picked Impact a few times.
There, yeah, exactly.
But so many people have picked Impact throughout the prelims to win the event. And it all comes down to that last game on Sunday. What you do, how much preparation you've put in, and what you've done to give yourself a shot. These next 2 weeks are going to be crucial to everybody, the preparation that they put in order to put themselves in a position to win World Cup.
And speaking of preparation, the World Cup layout from the PSP has finally been released. So let's take a quick look at that layout. So first of all, let's take a glimmer here at the overall big scheme of the things here from the eye in the sky. And honestly, when I first saw this layout, man, I was so happy because this is going to be an aggressive layout. You have a dominant snake side of the field, a little bit of a non-traditional snake, just to kind of throw a little bit out there and make people, do extra homework. But the center of the field is also very strong. And then the Dorito side also, I think Dorito side players are going to be very ecstatic to look at this particular layout. Now, if you're looking at things from the back center's perspective, because always the question is how many people are going to get shot off the break. In Riverside, the last event, the 4th event, we saw so many players get shot off the break, and I absolutely believe that could happen here, but it's going to be a measure of how many players can get shot while you're running out to your bunkers, because there is no back center. There's no back center, so I really think that's going to give an opportunity for the front players to get out a little bit more consistently than they did at Riverside. And then if you're looking at the overall eye in the sky top view of this particular field, and you're looking at that oh-so-important snake side, wow, Todd, that snake side looks pretty potent.
I mean, I'm looking at it from this top view, Matty, and Riverside was definitely one of those fields where it was a fundamental field. You shoot the guy in front of you, you get numbers, you win. This field right now from the top view is a lot like the Dallas, the MAO, the Chicago layout, where it's you got to pick a side and get out to your spots. If you look at this layout, it's pretty matched up on both sides of the field.
Well, the center also is very playable as well. The hole in that center 50 structure has been blocked. That is a complete bunker that you can play. Lots of different options. You can go to the stand-up on either side of those. I really think we could see a lot of those really aggressive front, those big launches off the break, a lot of chaos happening in that center of the field. And then on the top, what do you think about the Dorito side?
Well, you know that I'm a big proponent of sending guys up the middle, taking advantage of shooting off that side on any side on the break, and then attacking that middle and locking it off. That Dorito side looks awesome, but Matty, what you need to notice is the fact that both of these sides of the field are pretty balanced. The first bunker on the Dorito side is the same bunker as the first bunker on the Snake side. The first bump, the secondary bunkers on both sides of the field, about equidistant on both sides. And then you just start going up the field. From those secondary bunkers, the corners are both the same, and then you start bumping from those secondary bunkers. It's just about which side do you decide to overload off the break. It's going to be a coach's battle. Which side are we going to overload? Which side can we shoot a guy on the break? I feel like both sides you can attack just the same if you were to put 3 guys to the Dorito side or put 3 guys to the Snake side.
There's so many options, though, and that lends to exciting paintball. That lends to me being excited to watch all the games that we're going to have to call and that get to see you guys play. And I just think it's a perfect layout for World Cup. Lots of options, aggression on all 3 sides of the field, and that's what we're talking about. That's what you want to see at World Cup. I don't necessarily think it's too much of one of those quote unquote technical layouts where, you really seriously talk about doing your homework. All right, we send a guy here and lock this lane down. I don't think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a straight bloody knuckles battle, and that the teams that really put together, that play well in those squad, so if you send, like you're saying, you send 3 guys to the Snake side, how well are those guys going to play together? How well are they going to execute together? And then what are the 2 guys on the Dorito side going to do when things start going down on the Snake side? So I think we're going to see a lot of aggression, a lot of counterpunch abilities, and I think it's going to be a pretty exciting field to play, and I think everyone's going to have, honestly, a lot of fun on that particular field.
I do too. I mean, it's a really balanced layout. If you're looking at it from the back center view, then all the shots to the sides, to the outsides are pretty similar. Mm-hmm. So it really comes down to, at what point do you pick which side are you going to shoot heavy on the break? Where are your best players? Where do you need to put your best players in order to be in the best positions to win points for you? This field is a great layout for World Cup because it can go down on either side, either way. In Riverside, it was all about who can do the fundamental tasks, who can shoot somebody on the break, who can recognize the situation, who can read that option and then make a move. Here, it's about which side do we want to attack, because both sides are balanced. Both sides give you equal opportunity to get up the field, get kills, and win points for your team.
All right, so let's go back to, we're going to get to the schedule here in a second and highlight some of what we think are going to be the interesting games. But honestly, you never really know what the interesting games are going to be, especially when you add, the whole challenger side of things in too. And, we're going to be focused, obviously the webcast is on the Champions field. There's going to be some challengers games on there as well, but who's going to fight through the Challengers League and earn a spot to play in the Champs Division for 2014? We're going to find out in 2 short weeks. But let's talk about the top 4 teams real quick. What do you think about San Diego Dynasty? I mean, San Diego Dynasty they finished first at the first event, first at the second event. Everyone was like, oh my God, Dynasty is back on a roll. I wouldn't say they'd have a terrible year last year, but as far as their standards are concerned, they had a terrible year in 2012. 2013, they have their new coach, Rusty Glaze, really finding his form, I think doing a masterful job of dealing with the talent and the experience and the new guys that they had picked up. And when you look at how many points that each one of those guys has played on their team, Rusty Glaze has done the best job of utilizing his entire roster out of anyone in the top 20 teams in the Champs and Challengers division. And then they went into the Chicago event, took second, and then took 5th at the last event, which honestly, I think that's going to put them in a very hungry state for World Cup, because now it's been it's been some months since they had sat on that podium, so they should probably come in pretty hungry for World Cup, which honestly, historically, they haven't won in a numerous amount of years.
It all comes down to the little things. In Dallas, it was that one game, the couple moves by Oliver and Tyler Harmon to be able to pull out that game against Infamous, to give them a shot to play in the finals, to give them a shot to go and beat Damage and win that tournament. At the next tournament, it came down to them recognizing how to play the field. Go back, watch the tape. Rusty Glaze says we're doing the same exact thing. every time.
And Yosh stepping up too.
It came down to them executing. The next tournament, Heat has missed it by just the slightest margin, just missed playing that semifinal and that finals game. Heat wanted it more. So they pushed harder, they made those adjustments, they played harder, they came back and they won that tournament. In the last event, if it wasn't for that Heat Dynasty game that came down to overtime, Dynasty goes home by this much.
Yeah.
Everything matters when it comes to these tournaments now. Champions Division, Challengers Division. Only top 4 make it to Sunday. Every single little thing counts. Go back and watch Jason Trojan's interviews. You know, he says, we played good paintball, but we didn't do a few little things those first couple events. They took care of those things. The third event, Chicago, came back and they won. Damage, I'm sure they felt the same exact way those first 2 events. Getting those second places, they made the small adjustments. Kevin Bredthauer doing the things that he needs to do to understand how these tournaments work, make those adjustments, come back and win Riverside.
Well, let's talk about Damage, because Damage second, fifth, first. Beginning of the year, Dynasty, a little too much for them. And we did a podcast, actually. Check it out. It's me, Rusty Glaze, and Skinny Kevin. So I had the coach of Dynasty and the coach of Damage right after those battles had taken place. So it was kind of interesting to pick their brains. But Dynasty was just peaking at that particular time. And Damage, man, they have such a solid roster. They've been doing it for so long. And when you've been doing it for so long and you have had pretty much the same roster, and well, okay, I take it back a little bit. I mean, last year was a little bit of an anomaly for Damage, as you know, they had Baines and they had Alex Goldman and they lost those guys. But this year they came in, they're like, all right, well, it's just our boys again. And they came out smashing this year and took a couple second places. Then similar to what happened with Dynasty at the last event. That's what I'm saying. Damage goes into Chicago, takes 5th, is not able to play on Sunday, and then they come back and win the next event. So, but that's the thing. I mean, honestly, with these top 4 teams, when we start breaking down the odds, I mean, you know, Dynasty, Damage, Impact, Heat, these teams are so evenly, so close that it's who wants it more. Like what I was saying, you hear us say the same stuff all the time. Because it really is very much about who wants it more on that particular day, who's executing on that particular day. They all prepped before the event. They all practiced for multiple days. I mean, you talk about these guys' practice schedule. You know, when I'm talking to these guys, I was talking to Tim Montresor from Impact, who's ranked 3rd. So, you know, Dynasty 1st, Damage 2nd, Impact 3rd. And he's like, yeah, you know, we got practice coming up this week against Damage, and then we go, I think it was Damage this week, and then they travel again, more practice, then they go to Florida, play on Tuesday. I mean, basically it's like the 2 weeks before the event for the top teams is just filled with tons of different practicing, different teams, getting different looks, traveling different places, and then they go to Florida or wherever it is that particular event is. But they're just putting all that time in, and with Impact, you know what's interesting with Damage though is that Damage keeps having all these teams come to them to play. Because Damage is a real good practice team. It's a team you can get a lot of reps in, get some good looks in against one of the best teams in the world. But now heading to Impact, I think that, you know, Impact 4th, 3rd, 2nd. I mean, you couldn't be more of a bridesmaid than that. They're just right on that cusp, and I think that they might be ready for a victory. I mean, they built the super team they picked up Greg Sewers that you coached last year with Infamous. They got Dave Baines coming in from Damage. I mean, they really stacked that squad up with an already stellar roster. And I mean, when you look at Impact's roster, their roster can go head to head with any team on the planet. And so I think that Impact, and I know Chris has been picking them all year long for good reason, I think they might be ready for a victory, you know, but then there's Heat. You know, it's like you got Houston Heat. I mean, Houston Heat won Chicago, and they took, you know, it was like 2 5ths, 5th in the first event, 5th at the second event, a 1st, and then a 4th. So they're still quite always right there. I don't know. With Heat, it's an interesting little puzzle there.
It always comes down to little things. You know, we've said it a million times. Everybody thought last year at World Cup that Damage was going to win because Damage was so dominant. They picked up Alex Goldman right before the event. He comes in, he plays stellar, but guess what? On Sunday, when it mattered the most, when who wanted it the most, Houston Heat stepped up and they won the 3rd tournament that season.
Well, hey, so, I mean, when I just came back from the CPS event in Milan, Italy, and it was an awesome event. It's great to see European paintball alive and thriving. So many different players from different countries over there. Art Chaos won the event, and the 3 Russian players from Houston Heat play for Art Chaos over in Europe, and it's well, except for Sergey. Sergey so nice quote. He does not play on that team right now, but they got Mishka. They have Malloy from Moscow Red Legion, and then they also have Konstantin Fedorov. They got Kyle Spica from Dynasty. I mean, Art Chaos is no joke. There's been some rumblings that Art Chaos is potentially trying to get into the league next year. And so, I mean, that kind of, I mean, it doesn't take a big logical jump to think, okay, well, what happens then? We got Houston Heat heading in to defend their world title that they won last year. Houston Heat has won 4 of the 9 events that they've played in the PSP. You want to talk about a super team? That's a super team. That's unheard of. It's never happened before. 4 of 9 events. They won Chicago this year, 3 events last year, including the World Cup. So they are the defending title holders coming into this event. But, what happens? I mean, what if the Art Chaos owner decides that, hey, I want to come, because we've heard that, those rumors, if they want to come into the PSP, are they going to take those guys? Who else are they going to grab? I mean, it creates a situation where Houston Heat might play their last event with Mishka and Fedorov, which would be the end of an age for that team. I don't know. I mean, it's going to get interesting, but we're going to head to a break real quick. We'll be right back in just a second. Don't go anywhere.
How many countries I've visited,
how many miles you've traveled,
how many paintballs you've shot at different people,
how much baby powder I've used, how many hotels we've trashed,
how many places I've driven,
how many guns I've gone through,
how much I love the game.
All the times that you had to tell your family that you couldn't be there for this or that because you were going to play paintball.
How many friends I've gotten out of it.
That's just why I love paintball.
That's why I love paintball.
That's why I love paintball.
But that's why I love paintball.
There are massive opportunities, both for the sport of paintball and for your business. If we are successful in taking our sport to another level, unite with Paintball Access in our quest to elevate paintball and broadcast it to the world. There are advertising packages available for any size business. Join us. Advertise with PBA and help us change the sport for the better, forever. No one can tell what lives inside you. It's not for them to see. It's for you to find. And that knowledge comes slow and painful, and it comes through heartache and struggle. It comes through getting whooped long enough and hard enough until you realize that you can't be broken by somebody else. Failure and success have the same origin. They come from within. Behind every unbelievable move was a player who believed. Behind every comeback lives a spirit that refuses to be beaten into submission. Behind every adventure is a core of courage. This is the stuff of dreams. It's how legends are made. And it's why people will remember your name. So be brave, be relentless, be your own hero. All right, welcome back to The Breakdown, brought to you by PaintballAccess.com. Matty Marshall with Todd Martinez. World Cup just a few weeks away, and we were talking about, Art Chaos potentially coming in. Not really sure what's happening with that yet, but Art Chaos potentially coming into the PSP next year and its repercussions. But talking about a European team, we have some news to break for you guys, and this is honestly, to me, very disappointing news. The Tauntauns are not going to be playing World Cup. Not going to be playing World Cup, which is, with all that chaos that happened with the penalties and, some people maybe, I'm sure if you're a European fan, particularly, somebody from France, you're going to be like, wait, what? And if you're an American fan or somebody that wasn't happy with what happened with the Tauntauns and the hot guns, look, to put it to bed, I don't believe that the Tauntauns, if you're shooting, really hot, you're going to know your gun's shooting hot, but I know how those guys deal with their guns. I've talked to the gun techs involved with what happened, and I don't believe that it was maliciously tinkering with their guns to shoot hot. Now, and I'm not naive to the ways of the world when it comes to tinkering with guns, shooting hot. Was involved in one of the most lawless, during the most lawless era ever as far as that was concerned, and had to play against that all the time. So I don't believe that that's what happened with them, but it still, to me, is incredibly disappointing that the Tauntauns are not going to be playing World Cup. Financial difficulties was the information coming back from us to us as far as what happened and why they're not going to be able to make it. They put a lot of money into this year. They travel out and spend about a week and a half before each event here in the States. But I'm just like, man, are you serious? The Tauntauns this could have been their moment of retribution, this moment of okay, well, all these people had been hating on us for what happened with the guns, and we had a year where we wanted to come in and contend with the best, and they played some good paintball, and they got knocked down. Whatever. They could have come into World Cup and completely redeemed themselves.
I like where your head's at on that.
You know what I'm saying? I mean,
because
you don't get a lot of chances in life for redemption. You don't get a lot of chances in life, and when you work so hard and so long and put in so much time and spend so much money to try to prove something, where you're, okay, look, we believe we're one of the best teams in the world. We're going to go play with the best teams in the world and see how we do. And yeah, they got knocked down in the Challengers division, but it's like, man, really? Okay, you guys aren't, I'm just a little mind-boggled right now. I don't know. What do you think, Todd?
here's the thing. From the first tournament, we watched the Tauntauns come in. Mm-hmm. They surprised everybody. Everybody was like, whoa, I totally didn't expect the Tauntauns
earned a lot of respect
to be this good. Mm-hmm. And then they show up to the next event, still played well, underperformed a little bit, saved their own lives, went to Chicago, and they lost. Mm-hmm. They ended up having to go to the Challengers division, okay, for PSP Riverside. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? Things happened. They got caught doing bad things. They got penalized, whatever. Like you said, Matty, World Cup is your opportunity to show up and redeem yourselves. Hey, this happened.
Shock did it for years. Penalties. Shock did it for years. The Shock would have a bad year, and then they'd come to World Cup and stomp everybody out. And what did everybody remember from that year? Oh, after Shock stomped everyone at World Cup.
Yeah.
And Shock has an opportunity to do that at this World Cup. But still, and again, I totally understand. I'm not naive to the ways of the world. I know how much money it costs to play at this level, and I know what it takes to do that. But it's just, I was really hoping, and when I was at the CPS event doing the webcast for them, that's what I was saying, because my co-host is French, and he was saying, what do you think about the Tauntauns? And I was like, honestly, I don't think they mess with their guns. I know how those guys work with their guns. It was probably just inadvertent. And then also, I think that this is their chance to actually come and redeem themselves, and I hope they don't give up on their dream. And through financial difficulties, they're giving up on their dream.
The way I see it, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I don't know. Nobody can prove it to me that they did. Nobody can prove it to me that they didn't.
True.
But guess what? If they show up to World Cup and they win, I can't take that away from them. All I can say is Tauntaun showed up. They chronoed their guns. They were at 300, and they beat everybody down. Mm-hmm. But guess what? That's not going to happen because Omaha Bitches is going to do that. But at the same time, for the Tauntauns, that's what's up.
But that's going to be their
all
story
the controversy,
forever. But Todd,
no matter what.
But I know, but that's going to be their story forever now.
Because of that now. Unless you show up to World Cup and stomp people.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But that's the frustrating thing. Is like, okay, if I'm a player on the Tauntauns, I'm like, great. Now my story is going to be, we tried to come into the PSP where all the best teams are, and we had a rough year, but we still earned a lot of respect. And then come biggest tournament of the year after all this, chaotic craziness that happened with the Chronos. And now we don't come. It's like, well, now your story forever is going to be, okay, well, are they not coming because of that? Are they, even, and I'm not saying that that's the reason. They said that it's financial difficulties. I believe them. But still, that people are going to say that regardless.
Probably the same reason why they only brought 7 guys to the last event.
Yeah.
It costs a lot of money to fly from France, to prepare for the whole thing, to get ready to come to the tournament.
And they gave it 100%, man.
They came, things happened. They got in trouble. they got
They
kicked
got
out.
penalized.
So
And then it's
the
just.
only way to redeem yourself, show up to World Cup, win fair and square, and we're not going to have that chance.
Yeah, so that's the news to break to you guys. Tauntaun's not going to be playing World Cup. So let's head into some of these other teams, Todd. Los Angeles Ironmen, their first game is going to be against Upton 187 crew. You talk about a team that's underperformed. We were just talking about, I wouldn't say the Tauntauns underperformed. To them, they definitely did. But with the Ironmen, the Ironmen have absolutely underperformed this year. I'm talking about guys like Marcelo Margot, Alex Goldman, Mike Paxson, Eric Humphreys, who just came back, A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez. I mean, they have talent on that team. Danny Park, there is no reason. Stephen Pitts. Well, yeah, of course, Stephen Pitts. And there's still a little, we don't know if Stephen Pitts is going to be playing at World Cup.
I did not know that. Stephen Pitts?
Well,
that would be a huge blow for the Ironmen not to have Stephen Pitts.
The problem, unfortunately, for the Ironmen with Stephen Pitts is that Stephen Pitts is trying to finish his scholastic career, and we all know how that goes. We had to do that while we were playing too, and it's tough, and he doesn't really know exactly if he's going to be able to make it yet. And I was talking to the powers that be on the Ironman. I'm like, it seemed like we would want a commitment either way. I understand he's like they're not really sure yet, but regardless, if they lose Stephen Pitts, that is definitely going to hurt their chances at the next event. They got that Schrader kid. He's definitely a baller for sure. I hear a lot of good things about him. I think he. His first event was last event for the Ironman, and he definitely showed some signs of life for sure. But the Ironmen have definitely underperformed.
Here's the thing: the Ironmen have gotten stellar individual performances from all their top guys.
But never
Mike
at the same
Paxson,
time.
Alex Goldman, Marcelo Margot, Stephen Pitts. Every single one of those guys have had awesome games. But what they need to do is have all those guys play together at the same time and put together a great team performance. Danny Park is doing a great job when he gets in there, getting up the field, getting kills. It's about capitalizing on those advantages that their front guys create for them. Alex Goldman, you listen to Marcelo Margot sing his praises all this time. And Marcelo Margot is the guy that needs to step up and be the man on that team, but it really comes down to those guys all doing it together.
Well, I totally agree with you, and it is so hard, though, to have everyone coalesce and to have a cohesive unit at the same time. It's tough, though. I mean, the Ironmen, they have 187 crew their first game. Then their next game is against Dynasty, and then their next game on Saturday morning is against Moscow Red Legion.
Well, let's notice here real quick that the brackets for World Cup are the same exact brackets. It's how the numbers worked out. It's just the way the rankings fell. But the brackets for World Cup are the same brackets for Riverside. Dynasty, Russians, Heat, Ironmen in the same bracket. The only addition is 187. Vicious is out, back to the Challengers division. The other bracket, Damage, Infamous, Shock, Impact. Top Gun is out. X Factor is in there. I'm sorry. Damage, Infamous, Impact, X Factor. Top Gun is out.
And Shock's in.
Shock is in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you ever wanted a chance at redemption, you're getting the same bracket you had last event for all these pro teams. So all the top tier pro teams that are in, that want to fight against the teams that they've been having battles with all year, this is the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, and the Ironmen, you're right. It's the same thing as the team that's ranked right below them. So the Ironmen are ranked 5th, Infamous is ranked 6th, and just as the same as the Ironmen, who have a lot of experience and a lot of stars, and then a bunch of young, hungry guys that are trying to prove themselves, well, boom, go to Infamous, Los Angeles Infamous. Let's talk about them for a little bit. 3rd best finish of the year at the first event, and then it was 7th, 7th, and 8th. Not a good year for Los Angeles Infamous. I mean, they were basically fighting for their lives in those relegation games, because how it breaks down is on Sunday morning, the bottom 4 teams in the Champions League have to play for their lives and to avoid getting relegated. Now, Infamous dominated all the teams that they had to face in those relegation games, but still, they kept finding themselves there. Not the way that they saw this year going, especially coming off of last year. And I feel, Todd, you could probably speak to Infamous as good as anybody can, because you coached them last year, and it has essentially the same roster, except for Greg Sewers, who went to Impact. But they have essentially the same roster. And, they took, again, first at Chicago last year, and then fell off a little bit, didn't have the the best. They didn't play that great at the last two events. Then they head into this year, third at the first event. Like, okay, third's not bad at all. And then sevenths and eighths. I mean, that, you know, they did, but and that's the same story the same song you just sang for Los Angeles Ironman has definitely been the issue with Los Angeles Infamous.
Yeah, it's a testament to consistency in this league. The difference between heat, not making the top 4 in the first couple events, and then winning the next event, those small things, it's the same thing between taking a 5th or taking a 3rd or 4th and then taking a 7th or 8th. It's really all about those little things. It's about consistency. It's about producing. For Infamous, it's about getting production out of their front guys. Losing Greg Sewers on the Doritos side was huge because Greg Sewers was a consistent guy that could play almost every point, if not every point, and be effective. And then on the Snake side, last year on the Snake side, it was a group effort. It's like when you talk about in football where you have multiple running backs instead of one star running back. It was a committee. It was, I can get this guy on first down, this guy on second down, this guy on third down. It's the same thing for Infamous last year. We're going to run 3 different guys to the Snake, 3 different looks, and then we're going to get production out of all those guys. It's going to be enough to be effective. This year, having that 1 or 2 guys be a dominant force on the Snake side has been tough for them. It's been Brad McCurley, who was fighting a knee injury.
Brad McCurley fighting his shoulder. Brad
fighting
McCurley
his shoulder.
he dislocated his shoulder at the last event and was still able to muster a solid performance. But it's the same thing, man. I mean, basically, you could just say across the board that each one of those individuals needs to look to each other and say, look, I'm going to have a good game. Are you going to have a good game? Oh, you're going to have a good game. Are you going to have a good game? Because that's their problem. You can't just have Brad going out and shooting a bunch of guys on the Snake side of the field, and then you can't have Damian, who's been stunning. Damian Ryan has really stepped up. Damian is one of the best players in the world right now. He didn't have the greatest event last event, but still. Well, let's move on because we're running short on time here, Todd, though, because I do think Infamous actually has, Infamous has a chance for sure. Other teams that potentially have a chance too. Let's talk about San Antonio X Factor real quick. San Antonio X Factor, renewed practice vigor in that squad for the past 2 seasons. You know, ETV's got an awesome, the Planet Eclipse series, the roster. They got a new season coming out, and you know it's going to document the struggle for San Antonio X Factor to try to rebuild a winning squad, and it's definitely been a struggle for them. You know, they finished 10th, 6th, 8th, and 6th. They finished 3rd last year at the World Cup, not the year that they wanted to have. But they, again, that's another team that's been able, it's like Infamous. Infamous and X Factor have been fighting in those relegation games and beating the teams that they have to play. They have an awesome lineup. I think, do they have a chance? Absolutely. X Factor's won tournaments with the core that they have, and then also the guys they've surrounded themselves with. I believe, Dimitri Ninos, he's a baller. He's definitely a future star for sure. Not quite there yet, but he's, he had 3 penalties at the last event, but Dimitri is on his way. Scott Kemp's a world champion. They have a good roster.
If X Factor was in the top 4 or even the top 6 of all the teams that we talk about, people would be talking about Archie Montemayor as one of the best players in the world.
Like Fedorov.
But because these guys can't play consistently, and Archie often spends his time and his talent pulling games out instead of closing games, X Factor would be a top-tier team. What X Factor needs to do, stay out of the box, which they clearly know because that's hurt them so many times this year, and they need to just play consistently. They need to get together, get consistent production out of their front guys, whether it's Scott Kemp and Colt Roberts on the Doritos side or Dimitri Ninos on the Snake side. Those guys need to be more consistent. Don't get penalties, get up to your spots and do your job, and let the closers do their jobs. Archie, Grayson, Todd, and who am I missing?
Well, Colt's a big factor too.
Pretty much Grayson and Archie.
Grayson and Archie, look, Colt's the hammer on the Dorito side. Also with with Grayson Goff, who, Grayson flies under the radar, but Grayson was the highest ranked player on X Factor last year. Archie was doing damage control all season long because he didn't have a consistent one until the last event of the year where Billy Bernacchi stepped up, and lo and behold, they take 3rd place when Billy stepped up and started playing the paintball that everybody knows he can play. Now they got Dimitri and Billy there. I'm telling you, that team has a solid roster. Similar story as the Ironman, similar story as Infamous. They can't get everyone playing on the same page, and more than any of those 2 teams, or the 3 teams that we just talked about, have had penalties really hurt them. Yeah. And also they lost Zach Wake. Zach Wake, you want to talk about a chance at redemption? Zach Wake's playing for Infamous at World Cup. I know that's kind of a shocker, but honestly, I talked to Zach Wake. He was in Milan with Infamous, played for him, played well. Kind of had a little bit of a hamstring injury, so that's still a question too. But that's definitely a story. We're gonna have more on that coming at you at paintballaccess.com. But let's move on real quick before we have to sign off for the day. Moscow Red Legion, terrible in the beginning of the year, and then they come in, they get bumped down to the Challengers division, take first place, head in there, smash everyone except Royalty. And Royalty almost won that game, but then they just smashed everybody. Then they come in to the Champions League, take third place.
Yeah,
like
obliterating
Moscow,
people.
Yeah, just obliterating people. Moscow played a real solid tournament the last event in Riverside. So Moscow's a favorite too, even though they're ranked 8th right now and rebuilding their roster. But Moscow's got a shot. I mean, Kevin Klum he's a talent on the Snake side. Kevin Klum's no joke. He's French guy. Played for Icon, got picked up, just like Axel Godin did last year. And then now Kevin's awesome. They got Jason Wheeler over there, who was the rookie, one of the rookies, or one of the Rookie of the Year nominees last year. And then they got a solid roster.
They did lose Kirill. Kirill ended up getting that torn
with
Achilles.
the torn Achilles tendon. That's going to hurt him for sure. But that is going to hurt them. I mean, they still got a shot. They definitely have a chance.
As long as you have Biernikov on the field, you got a shot.
You got a shot. And then real quick before we sign off, let's talk about the two teams coming in from the Challengers division, Upton 187 Crew and Chicago Aftershock. Now, Upton 187 Crew, it's been a year in which they have proved that they do not deserve to be in the Challengers division, and they're not good enough to play in the Champions division. So they are so on that cusp right there. I don't know. What do you think?
I'll tell you right now, I'll tell 187 and Chicago Aftershock the same thing that I told Vicious before the Riverside event. If you don't show up wanting to win this tournament more than any tournament you've ever played in your entire life, if you haven't prepared better for any tournament than you've ever played in your entire life, don't show up. Because 187, you have to play Dynasty, Ironman, Russians, and Heat. Okay? X Factor, you got to play Damage, Infamous, Shock. You got to play Damage, Infamous, Impact, and X Factor. If you are not prepared to show up and play top tier paintball, you're going to go 0-4. You're going to play for relegation, and who knows what's going to happen after that.
Yeah.
But as far as 187 and Chicago Aftershock goes, you better be more prepared, more ready, more focused, and more disciplined than you've ever been for any paintball tournament ever in your entire life, or you're going to get smoked.
Yeah, but that's why you want. I mean, I would want that. We did it.
I know Nick Laval does on 187.
Well, we just did an interview actually with Nick Laval, and basically that's what he said. I mean, he said, and check out the interview on our website, Paintball Access. But he was basically saying that. I asked him, what rivalry do you guys have with any teams? And he's like, honestly, if anybody hates us, I don't know. We don't really hate anybody. If it makes you, I understand people want to watch rivalries, but I hate everyone in equally because I don't want any team to beat us, so I hate everyone equally. But what he said was, when I asked him what team that he really wanted to play, he said any of the top teams. They only want to play the top teams because that's basically the only way to get better.
Chance.
Yeah, and this is so just like you were saying, Nick Laval, rest of the 187 crew, here's your chance. You get to play some of the best teams in the world at World Cup to prove you're one of the best teams and to get a really good, solid shot at 2014, prove the squad. They have a core group of guys that I think is really good. And then also, just before we sign off, Chicago Aftershock, Karl Markowski, fastest player, I believe, in the league. We're going to have a race, actually, in World Cup to find out if Dan Holiday thinks that he has him. I don't know. And Holiday swears. Holiday's like, no.
I don't know.
Holiday said he can smoke anybody on damage by far, and that he's down to race Karl. Karl just came back into the league after being gone, getting his life squared away. Got married. He's got a full-time job, but He's the fastest guy I've ever seen play the game, played for a long time, and we raced Carl against everyone, the best, fastest guys that everyone had to offer, all divisional pro teams. Anyone that stepped up to race Carl for about 5 years, he never lost a race. He's a freak of nature. So I can't wait to see.
I'll take Carl.
That's what I'm saying. I got money on Carl for sure too.
Any
so
day.
yeah, so and not
But
only
this is Aftershock's best chance.
that's what I'm saying.
Most stacked roster that they've had in 2 years.
AJ Lawhead's a baller. Davey Simmons, Mike Bruno's really got a Caleb Abel. I mean, I think that they've now started to cultivate that talent. They're still making some of the mistakes that they've made before, but they're not consistently making the mistakes all the time. So this is the best shot that Shock has had in 2 years of having an awesome showing at it.
And everybody on the team is more bought in than they've ever been. Aftershock, all the players on that team believe more now than they have in 2 years that they can beat teams. So it's going to be awesome to watch Aftershock.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait. Honestly,
every game is going to be great.
I know, but I am chomping at the bit to watch Aftershock play. One, because they have very dynamic players. Love watching Carl play and all those other guys on the team. You know, AJ's a baller. Davey Simmons plays great. Caleb Abel's a baller too. They have solid guys. They play in a very aggressive style of ball, and it's Chicago Aftershock at the World Cup. I mean, that's some of the most fundamental paintball history. It's just going to be great. World Cup's going to be awesome. So it's coming at you October 18th through the 20th. Thank you guys for tuning in to the breakdown. Also, we have some news to break too. We're going to have fantasy paintball at the World Cup. We're going to be unveiling that as well too. It's the beta test for Paintball Access.
Draft me.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can get picked. But pick me.
No, we don't have coaches yet, baby. We don't have coaches. We're going to have a Todd Martinez. We're going to have Todd Martinez, though, coming in from 2006. It's going to be pretty tight. But, yeah, we also have, lots of different styles of paintball coming at you at the World Cup. The UWL, we're going to have coverage from that as well. 10-man is going to be there. I'm not going to be able to webcast all this, but we will give you all the information regarding what's happening with those different divisions. If you got kids and you're heading to the World Cup, JT First Shot is an awesome opportunity to get the kids involved. That's pretty sweet too. So and then of course, all of the new 2014 products that are going to be coming out. We'll have all that stuff coming at you with different vendors, tents, and it's going to be an amazing event. So thank you guys for tuning in to the breakdown. I'm Matty Marshall with Todd Martinez, and we will see you guys in just a couple weeks. No one can tell what lives inside you. It's not for them to see. It's for you to find. And that knowledge comes slow and painful, and it comes through heartache and struggle. It comes through getting whooped long enough and hard enough until you realize that you can't be broken by somebody else. Failure and success have the same origin. They come from within. Behind every unbelievable move was a player who believed. Behind every comeback lives a spirit that refuses to be beaten into submission. Behind every adventure is a core of courage. This is the stuff of dreams. It's how legends are made. And it's why people will remember your name. So be brave, be relentless, be your own hero.
how many countries I've visited,
how many miles you've traveled,
How many paintballs you've shot at different people.
how much baby powder I've used, how many hotels we've trashed,
How many places I've driven.
how many guns I've gone through.
how much I love the game.
It's all the times that you had to tell your family that you couldn't be there for this or that because you were going to play paintball.
How many friends I've gotten out of it.
That's just why I love paintball.
That's why I love paintball.
That's why I love paintball.
But that's why I love paintball.
There are massive opportunities, both with the sport of paintball and for your business. If we are successful in taking our sport to another level, unite with Paintball Access in our quest to elevate paintball and broadcast it to the world. There are advertising packages available for any size business. Join us. Advertise with PBA and help us change the sport for the better forever.